was a blowout for the ages. Welcome to Yahoo Sports Daily. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz, and we get right to the NBA last night where, oh my God, the Knicks went out and they disrespectfully reminded the Atlanta Hawks that they are the New York Knicks and advance. And I'm going to tell you something, Caroline Fenton, Jason Fitz. Like, you want to talk about absolute chaos, right, Caroline? I sat down. I met some friends out last night. I sat down. I looked up at the TV. I hadn't tuned into the game yet. I turned on the TV. I asked the restaurant to turn the TV on in the background. I was like, got to be able to see the Knicks game. Pull it up. And I said to somebody, wow, they got the score wrong because it was 72-22. It was not wrong. It was a 50-point lead in the first half for an epic blowout, one of the biggest blowouts in NBA history in a clinching game. I can't believe what we saw last night from the Knicks.
I know. I was just waiting for the bing bong text from one of my good friends who's a Knicks fan because I knew it was inevitably coming. Now, he did wait. He was very patient and waited all the way until halftime when the Knicks had an overwhelming 83-38 lead at the half. This was an absolute just who's your daddy type of moment. This was one of those games where the Knicks looked around and said, how the hell are we in a game 6? Like, what are we doing? We are pissed off that we even have to come back to Atlanta. We're pissed off that we didn't already close this thing out in 4 or 5. Like, let's just go ahead and go out there and start playing some backyard, Harlem Globetrotter brand of basketball. We are the better team, so let's just go ahead and act like it. And that is exactly what they did last night. Now, Fitz, I do have to say that in a blowout of epic proportion like we saw last night, the biggest Knicks playoff victory in franchise history, 140-89. I think a little bit of everybody is culpable in all of this. I think that there was probably at some point in that game last night, I don't know if it was after the first quarter when the Knicks were up 40-15 or when it was the overwhelming lead at half, but I felt like at some point the Hawks looked around and said, yeah, like we're good. Like we're just going to go ahead and give up on this. We're going to go ahead and take our foot off the gas. I don't think that was the mentality going into this game, but I do think a blowout of this caliber, everybody's a little bit culpable. But overall, Fitz, I just have to give the entire Knicks team so much credit. I've been hard. You've been hard. We've all been hard on Mike Brown. We've heard the reports of if the Knicks fall short of the NBA Finals, even if they get to the NBA Finals, Mike Brown's job isn't necessarily safe. Credit to Mike Brown for motivating his team, for getting everybody involved. Credit to OG Anunoby, 29 points, 11 of 14 from the field last night. Cat was outstanding last night, obviously. Jalen Brunson continues to be spectacular, getting so much contribution from the bench. I mean, everybody on that Knicks squad gets a gold star for last night.
I think at the end of the day, when you keep looking at this Knicks team, this is the moment where Knicks fans are saying, this is what we thought we'd be all year, right? This is the Knicks fandom is sitting here saying,
but they have been at times.
Right. But the problem is it's been so inconsistent. And now they bring it together in a way against a Hawks team that just isn't particularly scary, as I've said many times. But this Knicks team now looks scary. Something I keep thinking about is what Alan Hahn told us on this show a few weeks ago when he said Karl-Anthony Towns has found his rhythm because he's having fun and you can see it. And I think you and I in that moment were like, well, I'm not sure we've seen it. And now you're starting to see it from the entire roster. Whatever this pressure is of everybody talking about must make it to the finals, I'm looking at a Knicks team and I'm looking across the board and saying, okay, it feels like suddenly they compartmentalized all that pressure and they're just out here doing their thing. And when they're out here doing their thing the way they did it last night, good Lord, watch out. And the funny thing is, these are the moments that create that pressure. Like, it's not invisible, right? Like, we keep thinking, well, the Knicks are supposed to go to the NBA Finals because James Dolan said that this is a finals team, yada, yada, yada. We need Mike Brown to take him to the finals because Tibbs got fired for not doing well. These sorts of wins only put more fuel on that fire. These sorts of wins, the NFL equivalent is years ago when the Dolphins went out and beat the Broncos 70-0, and all of a sudden we looked at Mike McDaniel and we're like, oh, he's a savant, right? Like, so we saw last night. We're not used to seeing elimination slaughters. This wasn't an elimination game. This was an elimination slaughter. So you would think the Hawks coming into this in Atlanta would have this sort of thunder of the gods moment where they're turning around saying, no, we're going to fight for our lives. And They just had nothing. They were not ready for the barrage of punches that came from the Knicks. So to me, I think you're right. Like, this is a lot about the Knicks. This is about every single Knicks player. This is about Mike Brown. This is about the Knicks turning it on. This is about the Knicks hitting the gas. This is about the Knicks reminding everybody how good they are. And the funny thing is, the rest of the East right now has such massive question marks. We'll get to the Celtics in a few minutes, who are about to go to Game 7. Mm-hmm. The Pistons haven't been able to handle the Magic. I mean, all of this only adds fuel to the Knicks should represent the East in the NBA Finals fire, because this was an effort far above anything we've seen from any other team in the East throughout the course of this playoffs.
Well, I think that last night was the perfect example of the reason why Knicks fans have optimism, and probably why Knicks fans have been so frustrated in this team. Going back to even last season, and especially in this series, that when this Knicks team is hitting on all cylinders, when Jalen Brunson is doing his thing, when Mikal Bridges, 24 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists last night, but he hasn't looked like that all series long. At times, Mikal Bridges had looked like a double agent. Like, at times, it's like, did somebody put money on the Atlanta Hawks? Because it kind of looked like it at times. But no, he was a contributor last night. Cat had a triple-double last night, but how many times have we asked ourselves, whether it was in the regular season or the beginning of this series or even going back to last year's postseason, when we're looking around like, where's Karl-Anthony Towns? Like, did he not show up for work today? Because he was an absolute no-show. Like, there are times, and we have seen this Knicks team just not show up, and not even just not play to their ceiling, but look around like they weren't even ready to play. So it's like, it has to be frustrating for a Knicks fan to see what we saw last night and feel optimistic and feel like the Knicks have an incredibly clearly paved path to the NBA Finals, because in this East, could be anybody's. But it has to be frustrating to see what this team is capable of. Pure and utter domination. Now, look, it's the Atlanta Hawks. Not a bad team, not necessarily a world beater, but still, like, you're doing this in the postseason against a team who has gotten the better of you in at least 2 games this series. To see what this team is capable of, but in a positive way, but to also see the way that they can tinkle down their legs at the end of games, to see the way that man or anybody else on this lineup cannot show up at times, some of Mike Brown's questionable tactical decisions at times. What was it, game 2? When Cat and Jalen Brunson were on the bench together for a combined 11 minutes, it's unacceptable. So it's the double-edged sword of, we know what this team is capable of, but also at times they can look like a far cry from it. But at this point, Fitz, you brought up the Boston Celtics. I always try not to overreact to one game in the postseason, because in a 7-game series, one game is just one small sample size. But after one game, after what we saw last night from the Knicks, pure and utter domination, what we saw from the Celtics, how many opportunities that they've had to close this series out, but they just haven't been able to, it's hard to not feel like the Knicks aren't the favorite in the East.
I mean, think about the way we react to a series, and you mentioned overreaction. Like, you got to figure out at the end of the season, what was the end of a series, what was the overreaction? To me, the overreaction was the panic, and we now know that was felt when Atlanta gets a win against the Knicks. All of a sudden, it's like, well, I don't know. These Knicks teams can't be trusted. Like, now looking back on the way the series played out, that's the overreaction, because they win this game in 6, and they really, I mean, the way they beat them in this game is such a moment. It's such a lasting building block. It's the sort of game that gives you a different level of belief and momentum moving forward. It's the sort of game that gives you a different level of swagger moving forward. When you start looking at the contributions across the board and the efficiency that they managed in this game, Cat gets a triple-double. They've got points from everybody all over the place. Everybody shot well. Like, everything went right for the Knicks. And now they just get to sit and they get to watch the Celtics and 76ers grind it out in a Game 7 while they get the chance to get a little bit of legs under them. They get the chance to get a little bit of rest under them, and they get the chance to go into the next round with all kinds of momentum. Because now, when we're talking about who the best teams are left in the East, I think what we have to do is say, okay, what's the best of each of these teams, the worst of the worst, and the mid, the normalized? Where does that land? Well, nobody so far has put better on than the best of what we saw from the Knicks. And I'm not sure that the 76ers or the Celtics haven't had worse nights than the Knicks have had in their loss. So, yeah, suddenly I'm looking at this and recalibrating the whole thing. I mean, when you got the added factor of the momentum that comes from playing at Madison Square Garden, love it or not, it's real. So if you turn around and say, okay, the Knicks are going to be in the Garden, they're going to be a little bit more rested, they're going to take all of this momentum with them, they're going to be taking on either a 76ers team or a Celtics team that let's see how Game 7 impacts and affects them. They're going to be taking on a team in the East, whatever team it is, that is equally inconsistent because nobody in the East has truly proven themselves to be a juggernaut. I do think today, of all days, is a why not us day for the Knicks. I'm with you. Like, we're not an overreaction, hyperbolic show. We're a pretty logical show. So, in general, we try to stay pretty even. I don't know how the hell you stay even as a Knicks fan after what you just saw, because that's a reminder the best of the Knicks can beat the best of anybody in the East. So, weirdly, I even think it puts more pressure on Mike Brown now, because if they come out in the next series and they lay an egg, people aren't going to think, oh, they're taking on the Boston team that exceeded everybody's expectations all season, if that's where it goes. All they're going to think about is, how did you beat Atlanta like that and you couldn't beat that bum team? Like, the narrative around the Knicks changes greatly for the rest of the East because of the way they just kicked the snot out of Atlanta.
And I think because in so many teams in the East, we have seen how those teams could look like world beaters. We've seen how good Detroit can look when they're playing their brand of defensive basketball, when Cade Cunningham is going off, and also when Cade is actually getting some offensive help around him. We saw last night what the New York Knicks can do, how terrifying that they can look whenever they kind of get their swagger back like they did last night, and really how they have over the past several games against the Hawks. We know that when the Boston Celtics are hitting from three, I really don't know who can beat them. Not just in the East, but in general. Like, the best of the Boston Celtics can contend with the Oklahoma City Thunder and the San Antonio Spurs. Like, they are the elite of the NBA when they are playing their correct brand of basketball, when the Jays are popping off, when the threes are hitting. But the problem is, we've seen the warts from all of those teams. When Cade's not getting help, when Detroit doesn't play with that same level of physicality and that chip on their shoulder kind of energy that it feels like Detroit has made their calling card. When the Knicks just feel, discombobulated, when Mike Brown feels like he's getting a little bit too cute with it. And then with the Celtics, and we'll get more into the Celtics here in a little bit. But when the Celtics are going cold from three, when it feels like they're not playing as one cohesive unit, when it feels like it's either Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum feeling like they have to play superhero ball, but they're just not able to. Like, we have seen the ceilings of so many of these teams in the East, but we have also seen the floor. And as exciting and fun as the ceilings are, and we saw that from New York last night, the floors can be ugly. So while I think this makes for a really exciting and fun kind of competition in the East, while I'm recalibrating my brain of what I think the ecosystem of the East is, because I was like, oh, it's Boston, taken to the NBA Finals. Like, I'm willing to put my mortgage on that. Like, I'm willing to, at the beginning of the first round of the postseason, I was like, okay, so Boston, and then who else in the NBA Finals? I'm having to recalibrate my brain of what the ecosystem of the East looks like. But with all of that being said, I mean, it makes for a fun competition in the East, but also, if we want to look at potential finals matchups, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, with how many question marks there are in the East, that just makes the West that much more fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing.
And terrifying.
We've got chaos in the East. I'm not sure we always have great basketball in the East. That being said, inject the NBA Finals into my veins if any of the games are in the Garden. I don't care if they're getting their butts whooped or not. We're recalibrating how we feel about the Knicks. But we got to figure out, are we recalibrating how we feel about the Celtics? Coming up last night, Philly takes this whole thing to Game 7. And that man just got eliminated. What's it mean for the Nuggets and their future? We'll break the rest of the NBA action down next.
Another matchup between the Denver Nuggets and the Minnesota Timberwolves. How are these teams going to guard each other?
If you're Denver, you're going to have to find a comfort throwing different coverages at Minnesota and Anthony Edwards. It can't just be one thing. The same goes for Nikola Jokic, where honestly, whatever you do, I'm eventually going to get to a point where you do not feel comfortable with how you are guarding me, no matter who's on me.
Handoff, Thomas busting it through for the end zone, touchdown! Tavion Thomas and Tucson back in front with 16 seconds left. 1 second, final play of the game. Jerome Johnson looking to the end zone. Johnson, far corner, jump ball, knocked into the crowd. Game over, Tucson wins.
Playing basketball with your back to the basket and not able to see the floor in the same way was a whole lot different for LeBron. And so that's why it took a little bit for him to feel comfortable in that back to the basket positioning. He's got more post-ups this postseason than Jokic, Karl Anthony Towns, and Alperen Şengün combined. This is a huge story, and what a wrinkle that LeBron James has thrown into this series.
When you guys talk about your relationship and your friendship and your respect, there are some people who think like, well, do they want to kill each other? Do they want to fight each other? Do they want to hurt each other? You have to do that when you fight someone.
Yeah. If you have like females sparring in the gym, like it's really hard to not to go heavy. Like women just like, they cut that, you know, emotional thing off and they just like, it's me or you. And Rhonda has that, I have that.
Nikola Jokic, we just lost in the first round. I think we are far away. In response to a question being asked how far they were for a championship, he was also asked if change is needed, and he said, quote, "That's not my decision. Definitely, if we were in Serbia, we would all be fired." That happened after the Nuggets get eliminated by a Wolves team that was absolutely decimated by injuries. It was a shocking, stunning loss for the Nuggets, not because they lost to Minnesota. Minnesota's a good basketball team, but because they lost to a Minnesota team that was out there without their entire backcourt, that basically was letting the water boy come out and play at this point. It was just a shell of who Minnesota is, and they went out and they took care of business, eliminating Denver. It's a pretty shocking outcome to me that has me rethinking everything we've been talking about with Denver.
What an embarrassing loss for Denver. And like you said, it's not just losing to Minnesota, because Minnesota's a good basketball team. Now I picked Denver to advance out of this series. If I needed to, if I had to put my money on somebody in this series, I would have put my money on Denver. But it's the manner in which they lost. It's the fact that this was, you know, basically a skeleton crew for the Minnesota Timberwolves. It was the fact that Nikola Jokic, who I think is very fair to say, if he's not the best player on the planet, he is one of the best 3 or 5 basketball players on the planet. An MVP caliber player who can absolutely take any game. I mean, we all know this about Jokic, right? It was the fact that Jokic didn't have a terrible series. He didn't have an awful series. It's not like it was a no-show in this series. But Nikola Jokic was largely held in check, not just last night against the Timberwolves, but all this entire series. Like, whatever Rudy Gobert did to figure out what nobody else in the NBA can do, but he can do better than anybody else, and that is not just limit Nikola Jokic, but really largely shut him down for the most part. I don't know what he did. I don't know what kind of secret sauce he concocted in the kitchen. Whatever it was, it worked. So it's the manner in which this Denver team lost in 6 games, with Jokic looking discombobulated for most of it. The Minnesota Timberwolves being so shorthanded. There is no other word other than stunning for Denver, and also just straight up embarrassing loss for Denver. I mean, I think we viewed in the West the hierarchy OKC, and OKC was probably on a tier of its own. And then it was San Antonio and Denver right there, all as teams that I thought if they can get past OKC, or if they can avoid OKC in the postseason, those are legitimate national champion. Those are legitimate championship contenders. So to get bounced in the first round, Fitzy, I don't know what other word to use other than straight up embarrassing.
I want us to keep that same energy too, because let's be real here. Jokic has 1 title right? Which is nothing to shake a stick at, but one title, and now a couple of eliminations, and now a first-round elimination. If this were Giannis and the Bucks, we'd be screaming from the mountaintops. How could they waste Giannis? We have to find a new home for Giannis because the Bucks can't get enough done with him. I mean, we've spent much of the last couple of months talking about the fact that you could make the argument Jokic could be a 6-time MVP right now. And for that 6-time MVP, the Nuggets have one championship to show for it. Now, I'll be consistent in saying that, hey, I don't think one championship is anything to shake a stick at. But if we're going to treat everybody else in the NBA like one championship is a failure when you have a great player, it's time to hold the Nuggets to that same standard. And, you know, frankly, as has been pointed out this summer, they can offer a massive extension to Jokic for $300 million that will essentially keep him with the Nuggets for, we think, the rest of his career. They're going to offer that to him, and I expect he'll sign it. And certainly the Nuggets are about to get right up against that luxury tax. They're going to have to start paying extra money. But I do think it's time to start treating the Nuggets the same way we treat the Bucks or anybody else that has a superstar. When you have one of the best players of all time, when you have one of the best players of his generation, when you have somebody that we've genuinely been asking on this show and others if he belongs in the top 10 of all time debate, and you lose in the first round, something has to change. I mean, I'm not saying that it's championship or bust because I think that's unrealistic in any sport. It's a team sport, not an individual sport. But it is certainly not first round exits okay. So the Nuggets are going to have to look in the mirror for a long time, Caroline, and figure out what they're going to do. Because right now, if we're being consistent, I think it's fair to say that the Denver Nuggets are absolutely failing Nikola Jokic. If that's the standard we hold every other team to with superstar players, we have to do it to Denver too.
Fair, but I do want to point out the differences in that. The Milwaukee Bucks won a championship in 2021. They followed that up with a second round exit and then 3 consecutive first round exits. Now, I know we've been talking about the Giannis getting out of Milwaukee conversation for a while now, but I do think that there's a difference between being 5 years removed from a championship versus, 2, 3? And also with the Nuggets, last year they got bounced in 7 games by the Oklahoma City Thunder, the eventual NBA champions. Now, I don't want to make an excuse because getting bounced by the eventual NBA champion when you are expected to be an NBA champion surely isn't good enough. But I think there's a drastic difference between going the distance against the best team in the NBA last year versus 3 consecutive first round exits from the Milwaukee Bucks. I know winning a championship is absolutely the expectation, especially when you have Nikola Jokic. I understand that, but those are, I think, important differences.
Yeah, no doubt, but it didn't take that long you're right, for where they are today, there's the differences. But, I mean, Coach Bud was fired almost immediately after winning a championship for Milwaukee. It took no time at all for them to start a revolving door at coach. They've been making change in Milwaukee ever since they won a championship. And also, Denver isn't just a Jokic team. They have a secondary superstar. So I hold Denver to a higher standard because I do think that they have 2 guys that are those guys, right? Like, at least they're supposed to. The way we're supposed to view Jamal Murray is supposed to be in that same stratosphere. Now, Jamal Murray was terrible last night. So maybe that's a wrong time for me to bring up Jamal Murray being a superstar. But he was supposed to be that guy.
He was terrible last night.
I'm with you. I am with you that maybe it's not an equal comp. I just think that sometimes we sit here and we talk about how little Jokic gets credit for being Jokic. And the answer to that we're not really saying out loud all the time is that people don't care about the Nuggets the same way. The Nuggets don't have national, global brand recognition. The Nuggets aren't a leading brand in the mind of NBA casuals. The Nuggets can't do much that's going to make them the lead on a TV show like Get Up. So because of that, they're not always talked about, and Jokic doesn't always get the credit. But maybe the flip side of that is because of that, they're not always talked about, and they don't get the same level of vitriol and when they win, or when they lose, I should say, because I believe if this was all the exact same, and we put Knicks jerseys on these same exact teams, same exact player, same exact outcome, people would be losing their minds today saying fire everybody because Jokic got bounced in the first round. I wish we covered everything more like we cover Jokic. I just want us to be more consistent in the process. So
is that not the conversation today, though? No, I mean, Jokic just said it. If this were Serbia, we'd all be fired. And
Yeah,
to
but-
your point too, you said that Milwaukee fired everyone and completely changed their roster. Not completely, but changed up the roster after winning a championship. I think that was the problem. I think that's the reason why the Bucks are in the position that they're in. Because you win a championship with Drew Holiday, all of a sudden Drew Holiday isn't good enough anymore. So what do? You sell the farm for Damian Lillard, and then Damian Lillard tears his Achilles. So what do? Okay, we're going to pay him all of this dead money, and then we're going to go out and get Miles Turner, because Miles Turner is going to be the difference. The Bucks kept constantly trying to chase the high that was their championship, and now they're backed into a corner. They have no choice but to trade Giannis Antetokounmpo. Where I look at Denver, and I do understand when you fall so short, epically short of expectations, somebody has to show for it. But I look at this Denver team, and I'm like, well, I don't really know if drastic changes are necessary. What are you going to do? Move on from Jamal Murray? No. I still think waking up today, I'm like, okay, well, that really sucks for Denver. That's embarrassing. I'm a Nuggets fan. I am just absolutely devastated. I still think Denver's a championship contender next year.
But Denver just lost to Minnesota's JV team in a clinching game. So I'm with you. Denver's supposed to be that, but they're not that. The Nuggets are if the Nuggets can't beat we're not talking about the Wolves. We're talking about the Wolves without one of the best stars in the NBA, without their entire backcourt, and they still went in and knocked them down. I mean, it's not even that it was oh my God, how did you lose this game? They were in control of this entire game. So I'm with you, because we spent a lot of time this year saying that the Nuggets belonged closer to that top tier. Clearly they don't. If you pick Minnesota, which essentially they did down the stretch, if you decide you're going to take on Minnesota and then you get your ass kicked and you lose to Minnesota without their stars, you got to change something. I mean, I'm usually not a change for the sake of change guy. I'm looking around in Denver saying, if you can't beat Minnesota with this roster, you sure as heck can't beat OKC or San Antonio with it. So now what are you doing? You got to change something if you actually want to compete with the best of the West.
But what are you going to do? I don't think that this roster is one that you need to drastically change. I do think that there are some moves that they can make, but at the end of the day, whether you want to fire David Adelman, whether you want to, fire everybody in the front office, at the end of the day, as long as you have Jokic and Jamal Murray, you are going to be a consistent contender. And they're not going to trade Nikola Jokic. They're going to trade Jamal Murray.
Of course
No.
Of course
You
not.
double down on that duo and you see if you can put other pieces around them, or you evaluate the head coach and say, did we lose this series because of bad coaching? And I think that there is a world where you could probably talk yourself into that. But as long as you have that man and as long as you have Jamal Murray, those two are the reason why losing in the first round is such an epic failure. But as long as you run it back with those two, you're in a championship window.
Are you? Yeah, you should be, but they got to do something. OKC's not getting worse. San Antonio's not getting worse. So, I mean, I just keep going back to, if you can't get through Minnesota, I don't know how you get through. I'm with you. I'm not somebody that comes in and says, oh my God, change. I think if this were any other team, they'd be screaming for change. And at some point, Denver is going to have to look around and say, hey, we got to figure out something. Whether it's roster construction, whether it's voices, whether it's the way they approach the season, I don't know. But certainly an OKC team that has plenty of youth and great draft equity coming up, and a San Antonio team that is just growing into who they are taking on a Denver team that's two guys basically willing themselves to victory, and last night lost to the backups in Minnesota. It's at the very least
Billy Donovan to Denver.
Billy Donovan. Let's you heard it here first on this. Let's just keep that and clip that. So if it happens, then Billy Donovan to Denver.
If I'm wrong, don't come for
we'll
me.
see what change is coming. Coming up next, let's get a Vegas approach on everything happening, including more controversy in college sports. We'll break it down with the great Ben Fawkes.
Kick is on the way. And Dante Wright will bring it out of the end zone. Right across the 5, the 10, the 15. Right across the 20. Into New Mexico territory. 15, 10, 5. Does he get in?
He did.
Touchdown,
He did.
Pirates.
Dante Wright goes back. He played like a center fielder at Yankee Stadium and then takes it the length of the building. The young man was electric. on that kick return.
Do you not enjoy this?
No,
Would you rather not do it?
that's not in the cards.
Why not?
It's not an option. I've worked so hard for so long. I've built myself up to a position, and I've dug myself into a hole.
But I feel like you've reached a point in your life where, correct me if I'm wrong, you could do other things.
What am I gonna do? There's nothing like a fight night check. That's the beauty of fighting.
NFL teams tanking this season are making a huge mistake. Why, good sir?
Okay. This show has nefarious producers who fashion my idle comments over text into hot takes. And frankly, I'm fine with that, to be honest. Let's talk about Manning for a second. Someone who has not yet reached his potential by any measure. There will never be a player, in my opinion, that is a surefire lock that is worth burning an entire NFL season for.
Edwards has got it. Throw, tip, intercepted. Destin Mack, the INT. And he makes the biggest play of the game defensively for Orlando.
Great coverage on the back end by the Orlando Pirates. 4th down and 4. Destin Mack in coverage. Big time hit by Kyrie Coleman leads to the interception.
Brendan Sorsby's eligibility is in jeopardy with him under new NCAA investigation. NCAA guidelines state players who, quote, wager on their own games can face permanent loss of eligibility. So we're going to break that down now, as it's obviously the controversy still ruling the conversation around the NCAA, and we do it with our buddy, senior sports betting analyst Ben Fawkes. So we know that Sorsby bet on games in Indiana while he was on the team, but he didn't play in any of those games. So what type of punishment are we expecting to come down the pipeline for Sorsby?
Yeah, another week, another gambling scandal, right, to discuss. And this story has a lot of different layers, so we'll kind of try and get to all of them. I think for the first to really realize is that you could say, okay, it isn't as big a deal potentially, or isn't as bad because there's no integrity of the game, right? He was allegedly, a redshirt quarterback at Indiana. He wasn't playing. But in the eyes of the NCAA, it really doesn't matter whether you bet on your team, against your team. As an NCAA student athlete, you cannot bet on college sports. You definitely can't bet on or against your team. And you also can't bet on certain pro sports as well. And so Sorsby also is alleged to have bet on some first pitches for Cincinnati Reds games, UFC as well, which is a little of a gray area. But there's a lot of kind of money involved as well, which is also something the NCAA looks at in terms of, hey, if there's a kid and maybe made a mistake and it was $50, $100, there are potentially lesser penalties depending on the dollar amount. But the alleged amount that is wagered here is going to far exceed that. And ultimately, I think what people are generally saying is if this is something where he was a member of the team and he bet on the team, that's a tough road to come back from in general in terms of eligibility. Now, it's also interesting that unlike, let's say, another case, which we'll discuss in a bit with Iowa State and their quarterback a couple years ago, Brendan Sorsby check himself into a residential program for gambling addiction, right? So he took the first step, but that also is treated, as it should be, as kind of a mental health issue, right? Which means there is no timetable, even though we're here in very early May and we still have months before the season. We don't know necessarily that he would be recovered before the season even starts if he had eligibility. So there's kind of, is he recovered from that and well enough mentally and physically to play if he had eligibility? And then there's the NCAA investigation and everything else as to whether or not he would have any eligibility. And it seems hard to believe that he would. And then on top of both of those things, you have just the fact that this is a very important player in college football in general, right? This is somebody who was potentially going to be in the thick of the Heisman race. Texas Tech, obviously, a power in the Big 12 and potentially, as we saw, I mean, they made the college football playoff last year. They've kind of reloaded in this new era of NIL. So it also impacts potentially the college football playoff. This is all just from kind of one player and a story that kind of came out of left field.
You know, you bring up Hunter Deckers, the former Iowa State quarterback who was kicked out of the NCAA for betting on Iowa State games. Now, same thing. He was on the roster, but was not playing in those games. Same thing that Brendan Sorsby is accused of. We saw Hunter Deckers obviously get kicked out of the NCAA. I do recognize what you just said of the difference could be that Brendan Sorsby checked himself into a rehabilitation facility, that he's trying to get help for what is an addiction. And I'm glad that he's getting much needed help. But rules are still rules. So what is the difference between this situation and Brendan Sorsby's situation?
Yeah, and so with Hunter Deckers, this was in 2023, basically a group of Iowa State athletes, including Deckers, who was at that point the starting quarterback. He actually was the backup for a couple years to Brock Purdy at Iowa State. And this was kind of a similar thing that when he was the backup, there was some betting that he had on Iowa State games, on some other things. Now, his was a much smaller amount of money as well. And he basically wasn't allowed to play. He appealed to the NCAA. He didn't have any eligibility. The NCAA denied that appeal, so he sat out that season. He basically then went to Iowa Western Community College, played a season there, went undrafted in the 2025 NFL draft, and it currently plays for, you can't make this stuff up, the Houston Gamblers of the UFL as a quarterback. So that's kind of his path. The similarities as well, and one thing that we should note is both of these, when they were also accused of the gambling, were under 21 as well, right? So both Sorsby and Hunter Deckers, when they're placing these bets, they're also illegally placing these bets. You're not allowed to bet until you're 21. For Sorsby in the state of Indiana, and for Deckers in Iowa. So that's also something that was eventually kind of one of the charges that Deckers pled guilty to, was underage gambling. Part of the Deckers was that he had used, I believe, a parent or somebody else to essentially create an account. I don't think we know exactly how Sorsby was wagering, what books he was using, whether it was all legal, all offshore. Those details, I'm sure, will come out in some fashion, but it is important to note that both were also underage gambling as well. So just given kind of what we've seen with Deckers, it's hard to see Sorsby retaining eligibility, as well as we've said, it was a bet on the team he was playing on, even though he was a redshirt, and the fact there's just a lot more amount of money for Sorsby than Deckers. So similar in those cases, also similar, I guess you could say in a good way, in that the integrity of the games was not compromised, right? These are both players, when they were accused of betting, they weren't actually playing in the game. This isn't a Jonte Porter situation where they were the starting quarterback and there's an over-under prop, or they were intentionally winning or losing, as some of the things we've seen in college basketball and some of those scandals. So that, I guess, is the good news, if there is any, but there isn't a whole lot in this story. It's just kind of, we're waiting to see a little more, and it's going to be a big impact on college football this year. And I think for college sports in general and college football, there's more and more of this, and we're seeing how many people potentially are gambling on sports in college, student athletes, and then just college people in college as well. So there's going to be a lot more stories, hopefully not like this, but I think this will be something that will keep cropping up.
Plenty of layers to this, and Ben will keep updating us throughout the course of that. But let's move to some other fun news over the course of the weekend. We have the Kentucky Derby, which means everybody sits back and sips on their mint juleps and dresses to the nines and then figures out how to bet on horse racing. So I think it's important, though, Ben, to point out that betting on horse racing is different than typical sports betting. Tell everybody why.
Well, first, I recommend everyone watches the Jerry Seinfeld stand-up from about 30 years ago, where he's talking about the horse racing and do the horses know that we're betting on them and all of that, because it is fantastic. But in terms of the actual race, It's a little different. It's called pari-mutuel wagering, which is essentially everyone is putting their money in a pool and the odds fluctuate based on how much money is on one horse versus the other. This is something that's also a little different in that you're not getting the odds that you bet at, right, necessarily. And so it's a little confusing, but in essence, if you bet on a horse, let's say on Friday at 5-1, that horse could then, let's say, go to 3-1 right before the race. You're going to get the odds on 3-1, not on 5-1 when you place the bet. So there's a chance that you get better odds than when you place the bet, and there's a chance that you get worse odds. That depends on how many people are betting on that horse, how much money goes in, all of that. You can think of it a little bit almost like, let's say you're going on a trip, right? And you buy an airplane ticket. If you buy early, you think, hey, I got a good price. This is locked in. If that ticket fluctuated by how full potentially the plane was, and now your price went up, you have to pay kind of that final number. It's an imperfect analogy, but it's just, in essence, the number that you get at the bet isn't necessarily reflective of what you will win or lose at the end. It's just a different method of wagering.
So, Ben, our colleague Dan Wolken wrote an article on how betting syndicates are making these big last-second bets that will absolutely crush the odds for regular players with a little pushback from some of the racetracks. So explain why this is a problem for the average horse bettor.
Yeah, I recommend everyone read Dan's article. It was fantastic. And the crux of it is basically these betting syndicates that are in horse racing that use what we call CAW, or computer assisted wagering. And in essence, because it's a pari-mutuel system, there's certain kind of advantages because the horse racing outlets need money put in, right? And they get kind of a cut of all of the wagers. And so they're going to give potential advantages to, let's say, syndicates that can wager large amounts of money. But because of technology and AI and everything else, these kind of syndicates are able to get a large amount of bets in, large volume, large amounts of money much quicker than, let's say, you or I could. And unlike several years ago, right, where it's okay, even if you wanted to bet right before the race, you're at the ticket window, you have a bunch of money. It's much, much slower versus now, hey, you can press a button and get down a lot of this money. The issue is these are changing the odds right at the last second, right? So we just talked about pari-mutuel wagering. If I bet on a horse that was 14-1 and I think, oh, great, I have a great chance at this long shot, the horse wins. But then I see right before the race, because of some of this CAW wagering, the odds went all the way down to 6-1. Well, I still won, but I thought I was getting 14-1. All of a sudden, I'm getting 6-1. I'm not going to be too happy with that. And so that's some of the things that they're kind of trying to figure out, is how much of this money do they need to sustain, horse racing and betting, and then how much is kind of fair for everyone as well, because the Kentucky Derby is obviously one of the biggest races, the biggest race day of the year. There's going to be so much kind of casual public money in there. You don't want to turn off the casual bettors that are going to kind of be the lifeblood for those big events. I think this impacts a lot as well, the kind of day-to-day, week-to-week horse racing over the course of the year. And again, you don't want to turn off some of those bettors that are doing this year round. So it's definitely a problem they're going to have to address. It's something that's been around for a bit. And Dan's article was really fantastic, going through all kind of the stakeholders, what people think is fair, what potentially could be changed in the future, if anything.
That being said, prediction markets are a huge controversy, or conversation point, I should say, at this point. Kentucky Derby is one that most of the prediction markets are staying away from them. Why?
Yeah, prediction markets are a little bit in a picking their battles situation right now, I would say. There are a lot of legal cases mounting for a lot of different things relating to sports betting and various other things for prediction markets. Ultimately, there's we could go a lot longer, but ultimately there's a 1978 law called the Interstate Horse Racing Act, and basically certain states have, and the gaming commissions there have, a lot of power over wagering on events in that state, right? So Kentucky Derby, Churchill Downs in Kentucky, there's a lot of power that Churchill Downs has to basically ask prediction markets and the CTFC, hey, can you guys not offer this? We'd really appreciate it, in essence. And obviously the prediction markets don't have to, acquiesce to that. But I think given everything, this seems like this was up at some prediction markets earlier. It seems like it has been taken down before the race at just about every prediction market as of now. It's just something where, again, all of this is going to go at some point to the Supreme Court and figure out is this legal? Is this sports betting? Is it trading? Should it be legal in all 50 states? Is it a federal framework? Is it a state framework? There's a lot of things that are going to need to be figured out. I think this is a case where, just given horse racing and everything else, they decided, hey, we're going to be okay not offering this for this weekend, which, to be fair, is a little bit of something that hasn't necessarily happened for prediction markets, which seems to, for the most part, be, doing something, asking for forgiveness, not permission a lot of the time.
Yeah, stop me if you've heard this before. An issue in sports, it's going to have to be decided in the courts. You can follow him at bfawkes22, also yahoosports.com/betting to get all of your insights. Ben, always appreciate you, my friend. Enjoy the weekend.
You too. I'm a part-time lawyer now, can I say?
Let's go. Yeah, 1,000%.
Aren't we all?
Gotta have that law degree. Coming up next, we're gonna all enjoy the weekend. We'll preview some of the best and worst of the weekend coming up next.
Does Orlando win it in overtime, or does this instant classic continue? Deep drop and throw, end zone, Thomas Owens. That's an Orlando overtime winner. That is the most decorated receiver in the history of the franchise. Of course, he's the one to end it.
He's like 6'5", 230, like insane athlete, really, really good arm. And I don't know if he'll ever be the fourth best quarterback in the league, where he's like Josh Allen, kind of like always in, MVP conversations. Yeah. But he can be in the Matt Ryan, Dak Prescott tier, where he's like kind of always quarterback 7-ish, and like can have those years and moments where he's playing like an all-pro. Like that to me is the best outcome.
What put you over the top to like, I want to go to Indiana?
I was really close to going to a couple other schools. However, the point that really cemented me into Indiana is Coach Signetti really focusing on development. His big selling point was, hey, I don't know, like other schools are trying to sell you on if we're going to win a national championship, if we're going to win all these games. I just know one thing I can do is develop quarterbacks.
It's all about alignment and assignment, whether you're playing junior high football or IFL football. Myler fakes the give, goes the other way with it. He launches himself into the end zone, and he's going to get the touchdown.
That's just a dynamic effort. That is a will to want to get it in the end zone there, because he knew that he was running out of space.
Yes.
And so he thought, well, there's only one way you can go here, and that's up and over.
Oh, that beautiful smile from Bart Scott can only mean one thing. It's time for Can't Wait. This is where we figure out some of the best action over the course of the weekend on Yahoo Sports Daily. We'll look at some games and we'll figure out whether they're great or whether they're not. If they're great, they're obviously a Bart in honor of Bart Scott. And if we say that it's a Bart, you'll hear Bart say this.
Can't wait.
But the opposite of a Bart in a totally classy organization is always a fart, which means you'll hear this. See, we needed it. All right, we'll start with what they always say is the best two words in sports. Game 7, Celtics trying to save their season at home against the Sixers. Bart or fart, Caroline Fenton.
Oh, this is a total Bart.
Can't wait.
This is such a Bart. There's nothing like a Game 7 that you thought in a series that would go maximum 5 games. But, there has been drama. There has been the Celtics going cold. Is Jason Tatum going to be available in Game 7? Can Philadelphia pull off the upset of the year, of the century, of the millennium? Oh, this is totally a Bart, especially, too, because these are two teams that hate each other. Absolutely, positively hate each other. So a game 7 is always going to be juicy, but a game 7 between rivals and fan bases that hate each other, oh, give it to me. 100% a Bart.
Yeah, I mean, it's a game 7 between two rivals. This is 1,000% apart. I will point out, I
Can't
think
wait.
the reason that the Celtics fans are all nervous is Tatum left last night's game with calf tightness, leg tightness. It should be pointed out, that's his other leg. It's not the leg that he just rehabbed. It's the other leg. But still, you got to imagine that it is in the back of Tatum's mind somewhere. He knows what it feels like. He said, my leg was just a little stiff when I came out, just kind of assessing in the moment. The game was a little out of reach. He's not concerned. Shams said that he told some of the guys in the locker room afterwards he's fine. He's going to play. I just think it has everybody, Caroline, just a little puckered up, right? Like, it's only natural whether you're Jason Tatum or whether you're all of us that watch Jason Tatum as fans. It's natural for us to hear leg tightness, calf tightness, and suddenly everybody gets super nervous for Tatum. So I want him to be out there, but most importantly, I want him to be safe, and I want everybody to be healthy.
I mean, I think calf tightness is probably the ultimate red flag in the NBA, considering how many superstars have been sidelined from Achilles injuries that started with calf tightness. Now, you point out something very important, that it is the other leg, but he's probably favoring that leg because his other leg is probably not 100%. We talked about this, Fitz. Whenever Jason Tatum came back, we thought, are you sure about that? Because I understand modern medicine is wildly impressive, but what, 9-10 months removed from an Achilles tear and Jason Tatum's going to come back? And so I was concerned about Jason Tatum coming back as early as he did. So there's probably a little bit of him, whether it's mentally, physically, all of the above, really favoring that other leg. So now you're favoring that other leg to the point that that leg is compromised. So both legs are probably less than 100%. This is something that if I'm the Celtics, I would approach with an abundance of caution. You're a better team with Jason Tatum. Nobody is debating that. But you're here because you were without, in large part, without Jason Tatum. I feel like this is a game 7 that the Celtics should be able to win without Jason Tatum, but I do understand game 7. I mean, you want to be at full strength, but I'm concerned about this one.
Well, we agree that's a part. Let's look at some of the other action. We've got 3 more game 6s this weekend. So we'll start with LeBron. LeBron heads to Houston, hoping third time is the charm in the attempt to close out the series. Bart or fart, Lakers, Rockets?
This is a Bart. This is definitely a Bart because this series feels like, obviously, I mean, the Lakers win the first 3 games and the Rockets turn around and are able to battle back and win the next 2. This game has been so Jekyll and Hyde. LeBron has been Jekyll and Hyde. When we saw LeBron in the first 3 games look like peak LeBron James, that was far closer to 21 than he was 41. But then you see LeBron start to get gassed. You get Austin Reeves back, but you still lose game 5. The Rockets have felt like they found something new since KD has been injured. This Rockets team is young. This Rockets team is healthy. This Rockets team has everything that they want to prove. So for a Lakers team that felt like they were in total and complete control of the series, because they were in total and complete control of this series, versus a Rockets team that feels like they're kind of playing with house money, ooh, I'm here for it. It's a Bart.
Nah, it's a fart. I like it's a fart because it's LeBron and it's the Lakers. But, like, LeBron, the Lakers' offenses look pitiful the last couple of days. There's no KD in this thing. Like, we're trying to put lipstick on a pig with this. It's just a shell of the Rockets taking on a shell of the Lakers, and we're just obsessed with it because it has LeBron in it. Look at me. I drank my haterade this morning. Is like, so we got to fart some of these, right? So, all right. So now that I've just absolutely, you-know-whatted all over the Lakers, one of the most important brands in what we all do. Let's go to another game. We got the number 1 seeded Pistons, backs against the wall, headed to Orlando. Bart or fart for the Magic Pistons?
After we just saw the game 5 where both Paolo Banchero and Cade Cunningham put up 40+, that's a Bart. Let me hear it.
Can't wait.
Thank you very much. And also, it's not just like the offensive fireworks that we saw in game 5. It's also the fact that Orlando has the capability of doing something that I did not think was possible, and that is eliminate the Detroit Pistons in advance to the second round. I didn't even think Orlando was going to be able to beat Charlotte in the play-in game. Now here Orlando is in control of this series. Ooh, Ooh, it's a Bart.
Yeah, no, this one's a Bart. Because it's in Orlando too. Like that's just I wanted to fart it. I wanted to find some reason to be a contrarian, but I can't. The crazy but true.
You want to be a hater, but you just can't be.
Down 3-1. I do. Yeah, the Pistons were the last 1 seed to come down back from down 3-1. That Orlando atmosphere is going to be electric. Paolo Banchero, by the way, let's not get it twisted. Cade Cunningham is what we're talking about, 45 points. But also, Paolo had his 45 too. So we agree with that one. How about this one? Toronto heads home to host Cleveland with their season on the line. Cavs, Raptors, Bart or fart?
That's a fart. It never gets old. This is just such a wildly boring series to me. I'm sorry. I'm trying. I've tried so hard to get into it. I have tried so hard to, really hype myself up for this series, but it almost feels like I'm doing homework when I sit down to watch these games. I don't know if it's a boring style. I don't know if it's boring brands. It's just, it doesn't set my soul on fire. With how many series that I expected to be wildly boring that have blown me away and have been so fun, have been riddled with drama, I've been riddled with off the court, stuff and players talking at each other, players, trash talking. This one just hasn't really done it for me, Fitzy.
It's, with the NBA playoffs being so delightful so far, this is like you finished the perfect meal and you asked for the dessert menu. And then they pass you the dessert, and it's just all fruit. You're like, okay.
And it's like key lime pie.
Right. I love fruit, but I just wanted something more spectacularly desserty. I wanted something sweeter and better. This is a fart. It's a fart. But the good news is when the Cavs advance, inevitably, we'll finally get, maybe a better. I don't know. You're right. It's just, it has not lived up to the hype. You know what always lives up to the hype? How about the IFL matchups on Yahoo Sports Network? That's right. The Indoor Football League is always a Bart. Don't forget, we got IFL action for you all weekend long. Caroline and I are going to be together tomorrow in Jacksonville. You don't want to miss that. We'll be hanging out. I'll be then in Sunday in Vegas. You see that some of the games that we've got over the weekend for you. The Saturday slate, Green Bay versus Fishers. By the way, that Fishers team is electric. San Diego versus Tulsa.
Electric.
Another big old matchup. That's just your Saturday. We've also got Sunday action for you, including a Sunday night matchup for the ages. We've got some big ones over the course of the weekend. That one right there, Arizona versus Vegas, two of the best teams ever in the IFL taking each other on. I'll be on the sidelines for that one running around. So let's just see how that plays out. And, of course, while we're Barting everything and we're talking about Yahoo Sports, can't wait for the debut of Formula One on our network. Check out Yahoo Sports coverage of the Miami Grand Prix starting this weekend. You can watch F1 practice and qualifying coverage for free on yahoosports.com. It's amazing. And the Yahoo Sports app. Free practice 1 begins today at noon Eastern. Qualifying takes place at 4 p.m. Eastern, Saturday, May 2nd. The Miami Grand Prix itself will stream on Apple TV at 4 p.m. Sunday, May 3rd. You can go to yahoosports.com/racing for more details. It is a big, big weekend for live sports all across the Yahoo Sports Network. So be sure to check all of it out. All right, but plenty more to get to. Coming up next, there was a debut over the weekend that absolutely caused chaos. Angel, early impact in Atlanta. We'll tell you about it next.
Another matchup between the Denver Nuggets and the Minnesota Timberwolves. How are these teams going to guard each other?
If you're Denver, you're going to have to find a comfort throwing different coverages at Minnesota and Anthony Edwards. It can't just be one thing. The same goes for Nikola Jokic, where honestly, whatever you do, I'm eventually going to get to a point where you do not feel comfortable with how you are guarding me, no matter who's on me.
Handoff, Thomas busting it through for the end zone. Touchdown! Tavion Thomas and Tucson back in front with 16 seconds left. 1 second, final play of the game. Jerome Johnson looking to the end zone. Johnson, far corner, jump ball, knocked into the crowd. Game over. Tucson wins.
Playing basketball with your back to the basket and not able to see the floor in the same way was a whole lot different for LeBron. And so that's why it took a little bit for him to feel comfortable in that back to the basket positioning. He's got more post-ups this postseason than Jokic, Karl Anthony Towns, and Alperen Şengün combined. This is a huge story, and what a wrinkle that LeBron James has thrown into this series.
When you guys talk about your relationship and your friendship and your respect, there are some people who think like, well, do they want to kill each other? Do they want to fight each other? Do they want to hurt each other? You have to do that when you fight someone.
Yeah. If you have like females sparring in the gym, like it's really hard to not to go heavy. Like women just like, they cut that, you know, emotional thing off and they just like, it's me or you. And Rhonda has that, I have that.
Angel Reese got going in 13 minutes in her dream preseason debut. Atlanta defeated her former team, the Chicago Sky, 87-78. And look, it's unavoidable that Angel Reese to Atlanta is going to become a wildly popular story all year long, Caroline, because obviously she is a superstar that gets attention. She creates opinion all over the place. She's going to a market that can't wait for her to be there, and she is going to become an even bigger superstar in Atlanta because the Dream, man, they are ready for this level of growth. Ticket prices absolutely skyrocketing. The average cost of tickets soared from $38 to $68 per seat after the trade. What does this tell us about growth in the W, Caroline?
Yeah, and also the Dream are a top 5 most expensive ticket in the WNBA. And of course, there's growth year over year, but you have to keep in mind the star power that contributes to ticket prices. Because if you look at the most expensive tickets in the W, it's the Las Vegas Aces with A'ja Wilson. It's obviously the Indiana Fever with Aaliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark. And it is the Atlanta Dream, a team that was a postseason team just a year ago that gets that much better and that much more star power with Angel Reese. You know, I always look at, and I also think, too, everybody has an opinion about Angel Reese. You either love her or you hate her. That is the indication of star power. I think other indications for general interest or popularity, ticket prices, game viewership, game attendance, social media following. Well, she checks all of those boxes. Ticket prices, as we just mentioned, are up. She has more Instagram followers than any other player in the WNBA. That's including A'ja Wilson. That's including Caitlin Clark. That's including AZ Fudd and Paige Becker. She is the most followed WNBA player on Instagram. There's a 20% increase, or at least there was a 20% increase in attendance in Chicago from 2023 to 2024. 2024 was Angel Reese's rookie season. There is an even bigger hike in attendance in 2025. I mean, there is no way to deny it. Even if you hate Angel Reese, that means you're thinking about her and you feel some type of way about her. I mean, it is no doubt that she is a certified superstar in this league. She is a certified superstar, period. I mean, she walked the Victoria's Secret fashion show. I mean, and that might not mean something to you, but that's big. Like, that is an indication that she was the first athlete ever to walk the Victoria's Secret fashion show. Like, that is an indication that she is bigger than just the WNBA. She's bigger than the sport of basketball. She is bigger than just sports. She is a cultural icon.
The Chicago Sky lost over 10,000 followers the day they traded her. And I just keep going back to that. It speaks to attention. It speaks to attention. And what Angel Reese gets in droves is attention. And what she embraces is attention, right? Like, so when you start talking about just what we've seen from the attention that she garners. And I've said this before, Caroline, but having gone to several WNBA games in different spots across the country, the one given over the last couple of years is you're going to see, no matter who's playing, you're going to see a young girl wearing an Angel Reese jersey. That's fact. And I've gone to Connecticut Sun games where they were taking on Chicago, and there were more Angel Reese jerseys in that arena than there were Connecticut Sun jerseys. Now that benefit's going to turn around and hit Atlanta. You know, all those girls turn around and women turn around and suddenly wanted to buy the new Atlanta Dream jersey. There is attention that flocks to all of this. And that's just part of what we have to acknowledge with this, is that it's not just about the basketball. It's about people that make you want to pay attention to the basketball for every single league. You have to have people that make casual fans want to tune in. And Angel Reese does that. Whether they're love watches or hate watches, she does it either way, and she embraces it either way. The growth hasn't come without some conflict, though. Players are getting more national exposure across the board, and with that, more questions. So, go back to when we had Paige Beckers recently shutting down questions about her relationship with AZ Fudd. Is this fair? Are we adjusting? Are players adjusting to the new level of attention that they're getting?
They have to be. And I think some players are feeling a little jarred by that change. Candace Buckner, who writes for The Athletic, had a great breakdown, kind of an opinion piece about, this new era of the WNBA. Because we have players with millions of followers on Instagram. We have players that are making over $1 million. We now have players that are not just WNBA stars, but are superstars. Did anyone know the name Sophie Cunningham 3 years ago? 2 years ago? WNBA fans did. But now Sophie Cunningham, everybody knows who she is. People follow her on Instagram. People follow her on TikTok. Her podcast clips go viral. So this is just a new world that we're living in the W, obviously. But with fame comes some unwanted or, unwanted parts of attention, of being in the spotlight. And Candace Buckner highlighted one of the Indiana Fever's scrums after training camp. Leah Boston was talking to the media, answering a bunch of these questions, what she did in the offseason, and one of the reporters asked her, where did you do your workouts in the offseason? Fair question, right? Where did you work out in the offseason? And her response was, whoa, you're getting my business. That's an innocent question. That's a very innocent question. And that is just one of many questions to come, asking you about what you have done in your personal time. Where you vacationed, who you've been dating, what you've been doing, how you feel, what you've been eating. All of those things are on the table. Because one thing about celebrities is everybody wants in on your business and everybody wants to know what you've been doing. When you're making millions of dollars and when you're getting more eyeballs, when you're on ESPN primetime Sunday night summer programming, people want to know more about you. And that's uncomfortable, right? That's kind of an unintended consequence of fame. The bigger the stage, the bigger the spotlight, comes some other parts of fame. And just ask any famous person. Yeah, it's the glitz and the glamour and it's the money and it's the attention, but it's also the paparazzi. It's also the people getting all up in your business. That comes with it, unfortunately. And I think the WNBA players have to adjust to that. There have been some players who have adjusted to that better, maybe embraced that a little bit more. Sophie Cunningham is one of them. I think Angel Reese is another one of them. But some of these players that might have more reserved personalities, it's just something that they're going to have to get used to.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate byproduct of tremendous success. And look, I can't pretend to know what it feels like to be globally famous, but when I left the band, we had the 4th biggest song of all time in country music, and nothing prepares you for the first time you walk off a flight and there's paparazzi everywhere and you've just been on a plane for 18 hours and half of them don't even know who you are. They're just sticking the camera in your face because they think that you might be sellable at some point. And it's a weird reality. And it's not something I ever liked. It's not something that ever made me truly comfortable, but it's part of what you have to deal with. I grew up with and have remained close with one of the guys that was in NSYNC, and every time that we would go to, I'd go to one of his shows afterwards. We'd try and go to dinner, and you couldn't. You just got mobbed everywhere he ever went. And that wasn't something he necessarily loved or loves, but it's just part of the game when you get into that point. It doesn't mean that it's what you wanted. And I hear WNBA players when they say, this isn't the platform I want. I just want to play basketball. I just wanted to play the fiddle. I didn't want that platform either. But you can't always step away from it, even if you want to. And I hear W players when they say, why are they talking about our personalities instead of talking about the game we play? I understand that. But to that, I challenge. NFL Matchup is one of the smartest shows ever put on TV about football. And they bury it at 2 a.m. because nobody really watches X and O's. But if we have drama about Jerry Jones and the Cowboys, it'll lead shows all morning long. Why? Because people care more about the stories more often than not than they do about the actual X's, O's, and Y's in the house. Like the casual sports fan wants to feel like they're involved in the drama around it. The NBA has done a great job for a generation of selling us off-season drama, frankly, better than they can sell in-season product half the time. So I think the rise of the W speaks to the fact that now these professional athletes aren't being covered just for their professional athlete abilities, because that's what happens when you get next level famous. And certainly not everybody's wired to handle it. Not everybody wants it. But if you, as I did for many years, decide that what you want is to make your living touring around the world, you don't necessarily have a choice. You don't get to turn around and say, you know what? I want to play in front of 100,000 people in Hyde Park, but I don't want to be bothered at the airport on the way there. You just don't get to make those lines in the sand. And I feel WNBA players when they want to do that, because they certainly didn't sign up to be celebs. But at the end of the day, you can't always affect that. You can't always change that. I love Paige handling it, by the way, putting a clear marker in there and saying, my personal life is none of your business. That is absolutely true. I think she's absolutely right. She just has to answer that question, because that's part of what comes with that level of celebrity. Now, we have to wait until June 4th to see Angel take on Caitlin Clark and the Fever. Both Caitlin and Reese have come out of the 24 draft class, which was stacked. If you look back at that 24 draft class, Caroline, ranking it now, how do you feel about it? Where does it rank in the history of the WDU?
I mean, it has to be up there with one of the best drafts of all time, because it wasn't just Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, who are both cultural phenomenons. It was also Cameron Brink and Rickea Jackson and Camila Cardoso. Now, those three I don't think are as big of names, nor are they a rivalry like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, but also, I mean, they're celebrities too. Like, they're recognizable and household names, and even just for an average sports fan. I think when you talk about greatest WNBA drafts of all time, 2008 has to come up. It was Candace Parker and Sylvia Fowles, two Hall of Famers. 2019 was also stacked. Jackie Young was the #1 overall pick in that draft class. She's won 3 championships with the Aces. She's been a 4-time All-Star. Nafisa Collier was also in that draft, who, hasn't won a championship, but she is still, one of the biggest stars in the league. Arike Ngubwale, Marina Mabry, Sophie Cunningham. But I think 2024 has the ability, if not already, is better than those two drafts. Because I think one thing about drafts is it takes time for those players to establish themselves and achieve a lot in the league. But 2024 is already up there, if not superseded those drafts, and we are 2 years removed from it. And we already have superstars. We already have players that have completely changed the trajectory in the future of the WNBA just 2 years in it. So yeah, I think 100% it has to be up there, if not one of the best. Already 2 years removed, the best.
Yeah, it's interesting, because it's only going to keep getting better with all the talent. Real quick, we also got to make sure we get into the news on Caitlin Clark. She exited her preseason debut on Thursday in the third quarter after a hard foul by Alana Smith didn't leave her room to land. The Indy Star talked to her after the game. Clark said she fell hard on her kneecap. She felt good. The Indy Star, I should say, as in the newspaper, talked to her after the game. Caroline, how nervous should Fever fans feel about this one?
The most nervous ever. I mean, I hear her. She's like, look, I landed weird. I just needed to walk it off a little bit. I just got a stinger. Like, I do get that. But we had almost an entire season without Caitlin Clark. Now, the Fever were still able to find themselves in the WNBA semifinals. But still, I mean, we have been awaiting Caitlin Clark's comeback. Like, seeing her first logo 3 for the first time in nearly a year, it was just like, it was like a breath of fresh air. It was like, I feel like that first sip of water after you're walking through the desert. It was like, yes, we missed this. We needed this. But there's no doubt the Fever need Caitlin Clark. There's no doubt the WNBA needs Caitlin Clark. I think the WNBA has done a fantastic job of programming this year, that we get Wings Fever on this first Saturday of the season. That's the last 4 first-round picks, including Paige Beckers and Caitlin Clark. We get the Fever in the Dream, Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. We see several of Caitlin Clark and Indiana's games in their matchups. They're not just being played in larger arenas in Indiana. They're playing in larger arenas across the country. Wherever she goes, eyes and attention follow. So it's not just the Fever that need her. It's not just Caitlin Clark fans who love and adore her that need her. The W needs her too.
Yeah, put her in bubble wrap. Let's just wait until the regular season. Put her in bubble wrap. Keep everything safe. The W needs her. You're 1,000%.
Put her in a cryo chamber.
Speaking of, 100%. Speaking of needs, LIV Golf needs a big old paycheck. It looks like it has finally died. Jay Busbee going to join us. We'll break down the details.
Kick is on the way. And Dante Wright will bring it out of the end zone. Right across the 5, the 10, the 15. Right across the 20. Into New Mexico territory. 15-10. 5. Does he get in?
He did.
Touchdown,
He did.
Pirates.
Dante Wright goes back. He played like a center fielder at Yankee Stadium and then takes it the length of the building. The young man was electric on that kick return.
Do you not enjoy this?
No.
Would you rather not do it?
That's not in the cards.
Why not?
It's not an option. I've worked so hard for so long. I've built myself up to a position and I've dug myself into a hole.
But I feel like you've reached a point in your life where, correct me if I'm wrong, you could do other things.
What am I going to do? There's nothing like a fight night check. That's the beauty of fighting.
NFL teams tanking this season are making a huge mistake. Why, good sir?
Okay. This show has nefarious producers who fashion my idle comments over text into hot takes. And frankly, I'm fine with that, to be honest. Let's talk about Manning for a second. Someone who has not yet reached his potential by any measure. There will never be a player, in my opinion, that is as surefire lock that is worth burning an entire NFL season for.
Edwards has got it. Throw, tip, intercepted. Destin Mack, the INT. And he makes the biggest play of the game defensively for Orlando.
Great coverage on the back end by the Orlando Pirates. 4th down and 4. Destin Mack in coverage. Big time hit by Kyrie Coleman leads to the interception.
Saudi Arabia's public investment fund is expected to inform all LIV Golf personnel it plans to end funding at the conclusion of this season, per the Wall Street Journal Sports. PGA Tour is reportedly not enthusiastic about immediately bringing back the players that jumped to the rival tour, understandably so. So for more on this, we bring on our golf expert and dear friend, Yahoo Sports senior writer Jay Busbee, currently scheduled to attend LIV Virginia next week. So let's start right from the top, brother. What's happening now that it's finally looking like it's coming to an end? What do we make of all of this?
Yeah, I mean it's the end of a dramatic upheaval in golf. I mean this is a sport that got completely split in two. There's been nothing really like it in the last half century, at least, where you have such a well-funded breakaway league pulling such major stars away from the main league. And so, yes, the problem when you have a league that is built entirely on money is that when that money runs out, there's not a whole lot left to work with. And that's what LIV is trying to figure out right now. It's not dead, but wow, they got a lot of work to do to stay alive.
And Busby, I do think that LIV is inherently political. I don't want to get too political here, but from the perspective of the Saudis, why are they choosing to pull funding and why now?
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily a political, you can obviously look at it all through a political lens, but from a straight economic lens, they have decided to focus their investment, their billions, their hundreds of billions, on more domestic issues, more issues with a definite, obvious return on investment. The whole idea behind investing in sports like LIV and Kentucky Derby horses and soccer clubs and things like this was to influence the image of Saudi Arabia abroad. It was something that critics called sports washing. And the thing is, it worked because for the most part, we didn't hear after the first year or so, we didn't hear so much about the Saudi human rights violations that were committed by the regime that's also backing LIV. So it worked, but it also didn't provide them with the return on financial investment that they were looking for. The war has had something to do with that. They've had to focus their efforts more on domestic issues and rather than kind of frivolous ones, let's be honest, than in terms of the global perspective like golf. So yes, the Saudis decided they weren't getting the money back that they wanted. They sank anywhere from $5 to $8 billion into this endeavor, and they decided enough was enough.
All right, Busby, so educate me here then, because in my mind, every single golfer that went to LIV took up yours money to do it, right? Like they took generational, I'm willing to sacrifice everything. Doesn't matter. I'm making so much cash. I don't need the PGA. Now they're left with nowhere to play, presumably, and presumably they go back to the PGA. Well, if they knew the risk they were taking, they took generational wealth far more than the PGA was going to offer them to take it. Why in the hell should the PGA let them come back?
That is an excellent, excellent question. There are a lot of people in the PGA Tour that are asking that question, particularly of the players that filed suit against the PGA Tour. There was a consortium of 11 players, including Bryson DeChambeau, who filed suit against the PGA Tour. Now, this all kind of went away early on in this overall process, but there are bad feelings that remain there. There are a few people that they were on the downside of their careers. They were looking for one last big payday. Guys like Ian Poulter, Lee Westwood, Sergio Garcia. They may not have interest in going back to the PGA Tour. There were also a number of players who were kind of mid-level tour players. They were never going to be the big tournament winners, but they were making a decent living, and they got offered a paycheck with another zero in it. The tour might not be willing to bring them back. The fascinating issue is going to be guys like DeChambeau and Jon Rahm, who are at the absolute peak of their careers, but you're right, they 100% turned their back on the tour. Rahm said he pledged his fealty to the tour, and then a few months later said, you know what, I'm going with LIV. $300 million or so kind of changed his mind. So that is the challenge facing current PGA Tour CEO Brian Rolapp. He has to figure out how to bring these guys back, because they will be draws. They will be attractions. Seeing these guys in the field makes the tour indisputably better. But should there be some kind of punishment for them? And I think there will be.
So keep that in mind, that there could be or should be some punishment for those LIV players coming back to the PGA. What are their options in the short term?
There are not many, honestly. I mean, they obviously can't go straight back to the PGA Tour because they have to. The tour has laid down a number of rules. I mean, initially it said you're gone forever. That's it if you tee it up in another tournament. They've since relaxed that to say that a year after you tee it up in an unsanctioned tournament, you're eligible to return to tour events. And that's the route that Patrick Reed is taking back. Former Masters winner, played very well this year in the Masters as well. He last played in the LIV event in August of last year, so he will be eligible to start playing in tour events this year. Now, there are a whole bunch of tours all over the world, Asian Tour, DP World Tour, a lot of smaller tours that these guys can go and jump to, and that's probably what a lot of them are going to be doing, because they'll need to kind of play their way back into contention and keep their competitive skills strong enough so that when they do cross that threshold of not being suspended any longer, then they will be able to they'll still be in game shape. But yeah, it's very bureaucratic. One of the most maddening things about golf is how nitpicky and obsessive the rules can be and the bureaucracy can be. And that's not just on the course, that is in terms of the rules of the game as well. And this is what all these LIV players are going to be running into, is the teeth of this bureaucracy trying to find their way back onto the PGA Tour.
I also keep thinking, Busbee, about the reaction from other players, current players.
Yes.
Like, I've got a buddy that played in Major League Baseball. He told me the craziest thing about somebody that cheats is that they immediately sue the league and say, hey, you can't suspend me. My dues pay to legally defend all of this, so I'm defending a cheater, right? Like, so you mentioned lawsuits. Well, PGA dues are part of what pay these law fees. Like, so if I'm a golfer, I'm looking at saying, you took the check, you chose to leave. Also, I had to pay part of my money to defend a stupid, frivolous lawsuit. Why the hell would I let you back on the course with me? What's the dynamic going to be between these golfers that chose not to leave and take the check versus the guys that are now coming back saying, please, sir, may I have some more?
Well, the interesting dynamic to that is that one of the impacts that LIV had was that it forced the PGA Tour to boost their purses. So the players that stayed with the tour also made a lot more money as a result of LIV, indirectly, but made more money nonetheless. But the tour is kind of fracturing. The tour is fracturing into haves and have-nots. There's going to be, in a couple of years, there's going to be a couple of parallel tracks on the tour. So stars, the guys, the names that you know, the McIlroys, the Schefflers, and so forth, they're continuing to do very well, and they've done much better financially because of LIV's kind of influence. The guys that are going to be interesting are the players whose names you may not know, the players that are on that second track, and they may have a lot of resentment, particularly if a LIV player comes in and kind of jumps over them, as Brooks Koepka is basically doing, because he's a 5-time major winner. I mean, it's a meritocracy, yes, but it's also a star system where stars will get preferential treatment, and you'll see that with LIV. The stars of LIV are going to get that extra boost up back into the PGA Tour. And if there's hurt feelings, well, so be it.
You mentioned Brooks Koepka. Want to stick on him for a second. When LIV first launched, he collected the bag. He won a major while he was on the LIV Tour. And then he was able to jump ship from LIV and come back through what looks like will be an easier process than maybe some of these other LIV stars, the John Rahms, the Bryson DeChambeaus, who opted to stay in LIV. So is Brooks Koepka the ultimate winner here, who's kind of enjoyed the best of both worlds?
I think you might be right. I mean, he always kind of kept LIV at arm's length. Where guys like DeChambeau were all rah-rah and part of the Crushers Golf Club or whatever. Brooks Koepka always kept it at sort of arm's length. You didn't see him wearing the team gear all that often at the majors. You didn't see him doing all the goofy dances on social media that some of the other guys were. He's just like, you know what? I'm just here to play golf and make a whole lot of money. And he, at the time that he jumped to LIV, he was injured, and there was some real concern as to whether he would ever be able to play at his high level again. Obviously, as you mentioned, he won the 2023 PGA Championship because he did get himself back into major winning shape, and he's certainly very close to that now. But of everyone that went through this, Koepka, by keeping it all at arm's length, managed to kind of escape. I don't know if unscathed is the word, because he's theoretically paying a lot of money to the PGA Tour and its charities in order to buy his way back in. But in terms of reputation, I think he managed to skirt the worst of it.
Real quick before we get you out of here, Busbee, with the failure now of LIV, however we want to couch that, do you think that this sends a message in the future, or do you think we'll see another group try and come in and compete with the PGA at some point?
I can't imagine. I mean, if that another group would come in, if the basically bottomless Saudi wealth fund can't do it, who can? What can? You have to have so much money. You have to offer an alternative. The PGA Tour made some missteps early on, but they corrected. They understood what they needed to do, and they are making things much more favorable for their members. So there's not as much incentive to jump to one of these things again. But this is the fate of all second leagues, all breakaway leagues. Whether it's football, basketball, golf, whatever. If a Saudi-backed venture can't do it, what hope is there for anything short of that?
You guys can follow him on Twitter at @JBusbee. Busbee, we always appreciate your time, my friend. Thanks so much for hanging out with us.
Always, my friends. Take care.
Thanks,
Great
Busbee.
stuff from Busbee. Coming up, nothing has been better than the Stanley Cup playoffs, but the biggest star in the sport's been eliminated. What's it mean? We'll tell you.
Does Orlando win it in overtime, or does this instant classic continue? Deep drop and throw, end zone, Thomas Owens. That's an Orlando overtime winner. That is the most decorated receiver in the history of the franchise. Of course, he's the one to end it.
He's like 6'5", 230, like insane athlete, really, really good arm. And I don't know if he'll ever be the fourth best quarterback in the league, where he's like Josh Allen, kind of like always in, MVP conversations, but he can be in the Matt Ryan, Dak Prescott tier, where he's like kind of always quarterback 7-ish, and like can have those years and moments where he's playing like an all-pro. Like that to me is the best outcome.
What put you over the top to I want to go to Indiana?
I was really close to going to a couple other schools. However, the point that really cemented me into Indiana is Coach Ignetti really focusing on the development. His big selling point was, hey, I don't know, other schools are trying to sell you on if we're going to win a national championship, if we're going to win all these games. I just know one thing I can do is develop quarterbacks.
It's all about alignment and assignment, whether you're playing junior high football or IFL football. Myler fakes the give, goes the other way with it. He launches himself into the end zone, and he's going to get the touchdown.
That's just a dynamic effort. That is a will to want to get it in the end zone there, because he knew that he was running out of space.
Yes.
And so he thought, there's only one way you can go here, and that's up and over.
I can't do the wow voice as well as Caroline can, but the name of the game is simple. Our producers are going to put up a story from the weekend. If a story captivates us, we're going to do what we love to do on the show. We're going to go Owen. It's Going Owen, where we give it a wow or we don't give it a wow. Caroline, you want to give me a wow? You're so good at this.
Wow.
Wow. It's just, I don't do it that well.
Thank you.
That is the sound effect you will hear. If it's a wow, if it's a big one, then you will hear either Caroline or Owen Wilson give us the wow. Let's start with some Stanley Cup playoffs. The Oilers officially knocked out of the Stanley Cup playoffs after last night's loss. That means the best player in the world, Connor McJesus, will have to wait another year to try and hoist the cup. Does this get a full Owen Wilson wow from you?
I'm going full Owen.
Wow.
Parentheses, negative connotation. Wow. Wow. In a bad way. How do you, Edmonton Oilers, have the best 1-2 punch in the NHL, and it is not even close, between Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, the best player on the planet in Connor McDavid, who has led the league in points in 4 out of the last 6 years and 6 out of the last 10, who's won 3 Hart trophies, a Conn Smythe, and has been an All-Star 7 times, is the youngest captain in Edmonton Oilers history, and you have yet to hoist a Stanley Cup. Like, that's great and all that you've gotten to 2 Stanley Cup finals. That's wonderful. Close, but no cigar. And close just doesn't cut it in the NHL. So this is wow negatively, not just for Edmonton, not just for Connor McDavid, but also for Canada, for Canadian hockey. I mean, Canada hasn't won a Stanley Cup in my lifetime. This is brutal. I mean, falling short in the Stanley Cup finals, awful. But falling short in the first round of the playoffs, even worse, unacceptable.
Not only that, remember, he could have been a free agent and he signed a 2-year deal. He signed a 2-year deal for below market value, and he did that very clearly, as he said, because he wanted to give his team the best opportunity to win the Stanley Cup. And how did they repay him? With a first round bounce out. Like, you think this is the ultimate wow. There's no doubt. Like, I'm bringing Owen Wilson with me to say wow straight to Edmonton's face over and over and over again on this because, man, like, the fact that you let this happen. Now, think about it. Every single team, fan base in the West, when they start the playoffs, looks to find where Edmonton is. I'm a Vegas fan. I know this. We look around and we're like, as long as we can avoid Edmonton, that's what we want to do. Now you don't even have to worry about that because Connor McDavid is bounced from this whole thing. Like, that is just absolutely insane to me that you have a player of his caliber and you've been able to do literally nothing with it. So, yes, this is a bummer for Edmonton. This is a bummer for Connor McDavid. This is a bummer for Canadian hockey. This is a bummer for all of us that are now going to have to sit here and listen to Wayne Gretzky-like trade comparisons for the next year while we figure out where he's going. This is a bummer for everybody. It's an ultimate wow. How about this one? Next up, we got Duke. Duke has struck a deal with Amazon Prime, all right? So they're going to air 3 of their games, Amazon Prime is, exclusively this coming season. The first college basketball games to air on Prime. Does this get a full wow from you?
Nah, not really. Like, good for Duke for getting the bag, and good for Duke for getting to say, like, we have an exclusive broadcast partner. Like, woo, good for you. But, like, games getting on streaming platforms and airing on streaming services, that's not, like, the most groundbreaking thing in the world to me. Now, if this happened 3 to 5 years ago, yeah, crazy, like, wild. But now we're getting games on streaming services every single night. I think we're all just kind of used to it and accustomed to it to the point where it doesn't really feel all that special.
So here's the reason it feels special to me. It's because it's a multi-year deal that steps outside of everybody else. So now Amazon is just giving Duke money, number one. And then also there have been some reports that Amazon's going to be giving money to the Duke players to do advertising for it as part of NIL. So now all of a sudden Amazon is getting invested in certain teams. So now the reason it's a wow for me is this some sort of a interesting moment where teams will start to break out, add games that are exhibition games or however they can add outside of their existing contracts that will allow them to put on more games, that allows them to make more money for the program, that gives them more NIL backing. Like, this is, I think, a strong moment of, let's at least say, light precedent here for Duke to turn around and say, we're going to value our brand. And I know that everybody can watch every game now, but I'm old enough to remember when it was significant that NBC signed Notre Dame to an exclusive deal because it meant if you were a Notre Dame fan, you only looked one place for every single game. It was Notre Dame. And at a time when not everyone was on TV, Notre Dame was all the time. So just the fact that now there's going to be a standard watching procedure for everybody at Duke basketball, I think there is significance to it. So, yeah, I'll give it an Owen Wilson. Wow. Can no one chime in?
Wow.
Oh, look at Owen. Look at that. All right.
Wow.
We'll continue going through. Wow. I wish. Wow. I can't do it. All right. It just doesn't sound good. Next up, we got a wacky one. All right. A man in Kentucky laughed so hard at Younghoe Koo's field goal last season, where, remember, he kicked the ground instead of the ball, like came up a good solid yard and a half short. We all laughed at it. But somebody laughed so hard that it triggered a seizure, which sent him to the hospital, where doctors discovered a brain tumor. This man believes the missed kick saved his life. Does this get an Owen Wilson wow?
Absolutely it does. Let me hear it.
Wow.
Wow. This gets a double wow for me.
Wow.
One, this man's life was saved. Like, wow for that. Absolutely. You saved your life. Amazing. Go get yourself checked out. One. Two, at least Younghoe Koo can now say the most embarrassing moment of my career actually saved someone's life. Now, the most embarrassing moments of my career, Fitz, has saved nobody, and it keeps me up at night, and I think about it all the time, and it's terrible. At least now for Younghoe Koo, he can say, well, I did it for this man's family. I did it for, a medical discovery. He at least can say, well, yeah, it was a terrifying moment. It was an awful moment, and everybody in America laughed at me, but I saved someone. So it's a double wow for everybody involved.
I can't imagine watching that, laughing, and the next thing you remember, like, you're in a hospital. I just can't.
Up at a
I
hospital.
cannot remember. You wake up in a hospital, you're like, what
That's
happened?
terrible.
Well, you had a seizure, you have a brain tumor, and we're going to save your life. Like, I just can't imagine what any of that feels like. But yes, this gets a wow for sure. Just the thought of all the ways to say, hey, yes, everybody go get checked out, get your medicals done. But the thought of like, hey, I didn't get checked out. I just watched, like, the number of times I thought the Raiders were going to kill me. I never thought the Raiders could actually save me. Maybe there's some hope in all of that. All right, how about this one? A former Atlanta Hawks VP of Finance has been sentenced to 3 years in prison for embezzling $3.7 million with the team's credit cards. Do we give this an Owen Wilson wow?
100%.
Wow.
Wow. But the wow is placed because how in the world did it take him spending $3.7 million for anybody to notice? It's like, I feel like I'll get flagged if I order an Uber Comfort. Like, I feel like I'll get flagged if I decide to order a filet instead of chicken, like on the corporate card. I get a little bit nervous about it. Like, oh no, I'm spending too much money. $3.7 million. How do you even spend that? Never mind. I was going to say, how do you even spend that much money? I know exactly what I would spend $3.7 million on, so let me reel that in. But the fact that this wasn't flagged sooner, like what, $3.5 million was kosher, but all of a sudden 3.7 was like, whoa, let's reel it in a little bit. So that is crazy. A wow to the Atlanta Hawks finance department for not catching this sooner. 3.7 mil.
Look, it also gets a wow from me, but it's a wow, thank you, straight to the idiot that did this. $3.7 million. All right, number one, at some point, if you're going to start embezzling, you got to figure someday you're going to get caught. Nobody's smart enough to get away with it forever. So that means you got to have an exit plan. And by exit plan, I mean you got to figure out what country you're going to live in and how much money exactly you need to make sure that you never have to work again. Oh, and also that they don't extradite to the United States. Like, these are core values you have to have if you're going to embezzle, right? In my mind, this makes sense. I got to have it out to the end. You took $3.7 million and you still got caught. At what point during that process did you not look around and say, you know what? I should take some of this and just get the hell out of this country. Like, at what point did you not look around and say, this is enough that I can live for the rest of my life in this random third world place that nobody's ever heard of? And I'm going to, like, if you're going to steal $3.7 million, at least have a plan on what you're going to do to get out of having to get punished for stealing $3.7 million. And might I add, importantly, if you got busted and you're about to serve 3 years in prison for it, and you have to give all this money back, which I would expect happens, and you didn't bury cash in a backyard somewhere to make sure the rest of your life is set when you're done, then you're even a bigger idiot than I thought. Like, if you're going to steal, have it out. That's the only lesson that I took here. I'm not sure that was the right lesson to give anybody.
I want to see the ring. $115,000 on a diamond ring. I want to see it.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see what that looks like.
That is, well, also, A diamond ring that you got to pawn that. Look, he needs to go to criminal 101. Like he needs more time to be a better. If you're going to embezzle 3.7,
I'll take it off of his hands. Fine.
That's very
I
kind
will
and
take the
generous
ring
of you.
and I will take your Saks Fifth Avenue haul. I hope there's a Birkin.
That is, don't we all? Speaking of rings, OKC tried to get another one coming up next. We'll talk to Nick Gallo about what they can look for as they get the time to lounge and get ready for the playoffs to continue.
Another matchup between the Denver Nuggets and the Minnesota Timberwolves. How are these teams going to guard each other?
If you're Denver, you're going to have to find a comfort throwing different coverages at Minnesota and Anthony Edwards. It can't just be one thing. The same goes for Nikola Jokic, where honestly, whatever you do, I'm eventually going to get to a point where you do not feel comfortable with how you are guarding me, no matter who's on me.
Handoff, Thomas busting it through for the end zone. Touchdown! Tavion Thomas and Tucson back in front with 16 seconds left. 1 second, final play of the game. Jerome Johnson looking to the end zone. Johnson, far corner, jump ball, knocked into the crowd. Game over. Tucson wins.
Playing basketball with your back to the basket and not able to see the floor in the same way was a whole lot different for LeBron. And so that's why it took a little bit for him to feel comfortable in that back to the basket positioning. He's got more post-ups this postseason than Jokic, Karl Anthony Towns, and Alperen Şengün combined. This is a huge story, and what a wrinkle that LeBron James has thrown into this series.
When you guys talk about your relationship and your friendship and your respect, there are some people who think like, well, do they want to kill each other? Do they want to fight each other? Do they want to hurt each other? You have to do that when you fight someone.
Yeah. If you have like females sparring in the gym, like it's really hard to not to go heavy. Like women just like, they cut that, you know, emotional thing off and they just like, it's me or you. And Rhonda has that, I have that.
OKC got the brooms out against Phoenix, got a hero's welcome when they arrived back to the 405. But they've been sitting around for a minute, just lounging like the rest of us, watching the playoffs, trying to figure out who they're going to face in round two. So to talk all things OKC, we're joined now by Nick Gallo, sideline reporter for the Thunder, joining us as you get a little bit of time too, Nick. So as we look at this, at the end of the day, does this rest sort of benefit the Thunder in any way to you?
I think just from, of course, the bumps and bruises that come with heavy minutes in the playoffs, you love to have this extra time. You love to be the rested team heading into a series. We now know that this Lakers-Rockets series is at least going 6, could potentially go 7. And so, you know, you're gonna be the team that's gotten to heal up, rest up, sleep in your own bed. And then, you know, this Thunder team has a lot of experience now with some of these long layoffs. 3 years in a row that they have been the number 1 seed. And so they've gotten that full week during the play-in time to get into a rhythm, get into a flow of how they want to attack these extended stretches. And so I think that more than anything, this Thunder squad has gotten accustomed to and used to having these days in between to focus on themselves and really be present in terms of how they can grow and get better through the playoffs, as opposed to being solely singularly focused on trying to out-execute their team matchup. I think one of the hidden strengths of any team in the playoffs is, can you actually improve internally during the course of the playoffs? These days give OKC a chance to do that.
You mentioned the Thunder get the lovely privilege of sitting at home and waiting, and they can watch at home the Lakers-Rockets series as they await the winner of that series. Now, no doubt, OKC is going to be a heavy favorite against either of those teams. But in your opinion, who might pose more of a threat to the Oklahoma City Thunder? Is it the Lakers or is it the Rockets?
I mean, it's a pick your poison scenario because both these teams are very dangerous and in different ways. I mean, you look at, of course, the firepower offensively that the Lakers can throw your way, and we've seen them be able to have stretches over the season where they've defended at a higher level. JJ Redick, of course, an excellent coach who's gotten that team really maximized during pockets of the season. They've had some really rough injury luck, but if they can get everybody healthy, that of course is a very formidable foe. And then Houston, I mean, same thing. They've dealt with injuries all year long, but you look at the size and the length that that team has, very, very challenging to score on. They're very physical at the point of attack, and they have a clear identity as a team. And we've seen them now. They're putting some pressure on the Lakers coming back from a big deficit in the series, and they're going to have an opportunity tonight to potentially force a game 7. So neither of these teams is going to be an easy opponent. Both are going to be a big challenge because as we see every year in the playoffs, you can't predict how anything goes, and you can't take anything for granted. You just look across at some of the series that are going on right now, that Minnesota Denver series, Cleveland Toronto, I mean, up and down, that Sixers and Celtics series going 7. Anything can happen once the playoffs start.
I do love drama, though. Drama. I love it. And there's at least the possibility that we get KD versus OKC, right? Like, in the playoffs. What would the reaction be for that from the fans and from KD?
I mean, that's kind of unpredictable because since Kevin left for Golden State, this really hasn't been something that has been dealt with. There have been some regular season meetings, but for the most part, this will be new territory for everybody. I will say I think that both the fans and Kevin, once they're in between the lines, there's a lot of focus on just playing the game. And so if that happens, and hopefully Kevin is able to get back healthy, everybody loves watching that guy play. He's one of the greatest to ever play this game. And so, and he loves nothing more than being out there and hooping. So would be a fascinating series for sure. And obviously he's an absolute handful to try to deal with if you're trying to defend that guy.
Oh, I am here for the narratives that would be in that series. And I don't want to fast forward too far ahead because I know nobody is a lock for the Western Conference Finals, but it does kind of feel like OKC and San Antonio are destined to face off in the Western Conference Finals. Victor Wembanyama, I mean, I do not know how you stop that man. I truly do not. But what do you think would be Oklahoma City's, game plan and strategy and at least trying to limit him?
Well, I think, and this is far away, you can't make the Western Conference Finals today or tomorrow. You don't even have a game to play yet. So the Thunder is really going to be focused on being present. I think that's what's gotten this team to this level already. And that's what's helped them sustain the success is what they call being where their feet are. You got to be present in competition every single day to even give yourselves a chance. Now, to your question, every player, every team that is at that level that you're talking about, they have things that you have to be focused on. You have to attack. And, Victor Wembanyama obviously is a plan A player, as the Thunder talk about. And so often the Thunder goes into these games and, tries to limit the easy stuff for those types of players. We saw that in the first round. Devin Booker, was able to score and get, into the 20s many nights in that first round series, but everything was a challenge. He had to work for every little bit of it. And he wasn't able to get, those hyper efficient scoring nights, tons of stuff at the rim and at the free throw line. Those are the things that the Thunder is going to be focused on this upcoming round with whoever it plays, either Houston or LA. And if it's fortunate enough to move on, regardless of who that opponent is, if they do move on, that's going to be the focus is can you prevent the easy stuff, the garbage points, and make whoever that plan A player is earn everything that they get.
So, Nick, if OKC has an Achilles heel at all for another team to try and attack, what is it?
I think that this is a really well-constructed team. If you look at what Sam Presti has done and you look at the roster, you look at the depth, this team can go a lot of different directions. They can play big, and that's something that we've talked in recent days with Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein about. You may remember last season, heading into the playoffs, Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein had only played about 10 games together at starting center and starting power forward. That was a very new experiment that they rushed into the playoffs with. It ended up working out well enough to be able to win a championship. But this year, they've really honed it, and they've developed it in a different way that they can play double big. They can go small with just one center. We saw in that first round that actually Jay Will, who you see there on the far right screen, he's got the headset on. He can play single center and be a stretch five for this team. There's so many different directions. And so I think one of the superpowers that the Thunder has is if they're sensing in a game that something is not working, or that the other team is gaining an advantage. This is a very malleable team. This is a very versatile and adaptable team. It's something that Mark Daigneault and this Thunder staff have been coaching into the team for the last half decade is, hey, we have to be ready to play different ways. We've got to be able to morph and transform. I think a perfect example of that is Game 4 against the Suns. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander played a different substitution pattern than he normally does. That was a decisive move by Mark Daigneault to actually change up his play pattern just to keep the Suns off guard. And I think you'll see stuff like that throughout the course of a series where the Thunder is actually trying to pace ahead of the series, not necessarily anticipate what threats might be coming their way, but try to lean into the adaptability, try to lean into the depth of the team to put the other team, put their opponent on their heels, as opposed to being a static object. In the playoffs, you never want to be, you always want to be a moving target. You never want to be sitting still, because that's where teams can line up and fire at you.
Devin Booker in the previous series went up at the podium and called out the officiating in their series against Oklahoma City. And Devin Booker is not a player with a history of calling out the referees or officiating. What is the Oklahoma City perspective of this idea that the Thunder get a more favorable whistle?
I mean, I think that as we've seen over the course of history in the NBA, this is the type of attention, criticism, slings and arrows that you get when you're coming off of a championship run and you're, having success. Is teams are trying to find every way that they possibly can to gain an advantage against you. And so this is not rare. This is not uncommon. This is not something that other teams have not experienced. So the Thunder, the outside noise, they can't control any of it. Everything that they do is focused on the task at hand. It's focused on meaningfully, how can they impact winning on a day-to-day basis? How can they control what they can control? They can't control what other teams say about them, what other players, what the Twitter narratives are, whatever. All of those things are going to exist regardless of what happens in between the lines. They have to be locked in and focused on their job and controlling what they can control. They've done a masterful job of that. Despite being one of the youngest teams in the league over the last couple of years, they're still the sixth youngest team in the NBA this season. And for them to have that level of maturity, to see past that, to not get baited into that, I think has been very impressive.
Jalen Williams injured in the first round. What's the latest on his injury status?
Still week to week. It was about not quite a week ago that we got that update that he was going to be evaluated on a week-to-week basis. In good spirits, got to hear him joking around yesterday at practice, but we don't have any clear-cut information on what his availability will be for the second round series. Hopefully, we'll know more here in the coming days.
I'm interested to hear your perspective on this, Nick, with Jalen Williams, because I have said, look, Jalen Williams only played 33 games this year. Like, the Thunder have been able to find ways to win without him or SGA at times or Chet at times. Am I just approaching this with a way too laissez-faire of an attitude with some of the availability of these players? Or is there a sense of confidence that they don't have to be at full strength in order to find themselves where they want to be?
I mean, they certainly need all of these guys, and they want them, desperately to be healthy and to be able to, have sustainable availability and performance moving forward. That's of the utmost importance. I think we saw that last year when the Thunder brought Chet Holmgren back, as they wanted to make sure that when he came back, he was able to stay back. And of course, unfortunately, J-Dub had this injury in game 2 of last round, but you certainly need and you want everybody. But going back to what I was talking about before in terms of the adaptability, this is something that the Thunder has been really proactive about and embracing. And I think the old school version of the NBA was, you have your 9 guys that are in the rotation, and those same 9 guys, they play the exact same minutes every single night. They know exactly when they're coming into the game, and that's it. And those are the only 9 guys that you ride with all season long. The Thunder has really tried to throw that out the window in order to be able to accept and brace themselves for the unexpected like this. And so if you look at the Thunder, you really got 13 potential rotation player guys. You saw guys like Aaron Wiggins and Jared McCain go in there in games 3 and 4 and have big time impacts on the road in Phoenix, despite not being a part of the rotation in games 1 and 2. All you have to do is look to last year's Western Conference Finals and Finals. A guy like Kenrich Williams, who hasn't been in the rotation, he played massive, crucial minutes for the Thunder in the Finals and Western Conference Finals last year. And right now, he's not necessarily in that original rotation. That is, just such a massive advantage for OKC to be able to pivot and to have guys who are absolutely ready to make an impact when their name is called. And so obviously everybody wishing J-Dub a speedy recovery and hoping that he can get back as soon as possible. But this is a team that understands that this isn't going to be the last bit of adversity that they face here in this playoff run. And so they've got to be prepared to pivot with whatever comes their way.
Nick, we got about a minute left. You covered this team a year ago right now. We were saying they haven't won a championship. What's the biggest difference you feel for this team from last team now that they have that chip?
I think that there's a self-assuredness of, okay, here's what we want to get to. Here are the things that really matter. And the amazing thing is playoff basketball, this team has really learned and showed it all comes down to the fundamentals. It really comes down to those basic things that they're learning at the very beginning of training camp back in late September and early October. And sometimes during the course of a long season, and you look at all the different numbers and over the course of the year, the highlight plays, the clutch time, everything, and the shot making, so much of it comes down to the fundamentals, the technique, guarding with legality, playing with force and tempo and speed on offense, all of and being connected and communicating on defense. I mean, it's all those little details. And we've gotten to hear from Jared McCain that this is his first playoff experience, and his eyes have been open to just how much the fundamentals and the details really matter.
You can follow him on Twitter, X at Nick A. Gallo. Nick, really appreciate your time and expertise on all this. Enjoy the playoff run. Enjoy a few extra days rest, but enjoy the run. We appreciate you.
Gonna soak it up. Thanks so much for having me. Great talking to y'all.
Caroline,
thanks, Nick.
I just keep coming back to something we've talked about all day, consistency, right? When you listen to Nick talk, and we've talked about the Knicks, and we've talked about the Celtics and everybody else, OKC has something that so many teams just don't have, which is night in, night out, they are consistent.
They're consistent and they're multifaceted. That's what makes them so terrifying. Because we look at the Celtics, for example. If Jason Tatum can't go, and sure, look, I know the Celtics won a lot of games in the regular season without Jason Tatum, but the postseason is a different beast. And you feel significantly more comfortable with Jason Tatum than you feel without him. But if you don't have him, and if the Celtics don't hit from beyond the arc, what other weapon do the Celtics really have? Look, they're a team that I would trust. But if they're 11 of 43 from 3 or whatever it was like they were last night in the game before, I don't feel awfully confident in the Celtics' ability to win basketball games. What have we said all season long about the Knicks? Inconsistent. And they're such a difficult team to project. And I know it's on the Eastern side of things, but a level of trust that we have in this OKC team because they do have that consistency.
The consistency is part of what to so many people makes them boring, but I'll take boring and consistent all the way to another NBA championship, which right now, remember, OKC's just sitting around watching the playoffs because they've already advanced. We'll be back here Monday morning to break down a wild weekend coming up. Come hang out with us. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. Thanks for watching.